I'm Stacy, 35 years old, and I never thought my own parents would orchestrate the ultimate betrayal on Thanksgiving Day. Standing in their living room, surrounded by relatives who'd been plotting against me for months, I heard the words that changed everything. Buy your sister, Melissa, a $2.5 million villa in Beverly Hills within 3 months, or we'll disown you forever. The shock nearly brought me to my knees, but nothing prepared me for my mother's final twist of the knife. You've had your success. Now it's time to share. Before we dive into this family nightmare, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Are you someone who's also dealt with toxic family dynamics? Hit that like button if you believe family shouldn't mean financial manipulation, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about surviving family betrayal. Ring that notification bell, because what happens next will show you exactly why blood isn't always thicker than water, and sometimes the family you choose is worth more than the one you're born into. Growing up in suburban Connecticut, I learned early that my family operated on a twisted set of rules. While I spent nights studying for my AP exams and working part-time at the local bookstore to save for college, my younger sister Melissa lived in a completely different reality. She was the baby, the princess, the one who could do no wrong. When I earned a full scholarship to MIT through years of academic excellence, my parents' response was lukewarm at best. Well, Stacy's always been the smart one, my mother would say, as if intelligence was something I'd selfishly hoarded rather than something I'd worked tirelessly to develop. The disparity only grew wider with time. Melissa dropped out of 3 different colleges, each failure met with excuses and compensation. First, it was the University of Connecticut, where the classes were too early. Then Boston University, where the professors were too demanding. Finally, the local community college, where she lasted exactly 2 weeks before deciding that formal education wasn't her path. Each dropout was followed by a shopping spree, funded by our parents, a new car, to lift her spirits, or a vacation to help her find herself. Meanwhile, I was building my first startup at 28, surviving on ramen noodles and 4 hours of sleep, never once asking for help. By 33, I'd sold that company for $15 million. The years of sacrifice had paid off, and I'd secured a position as senior vice president at one of Silicon Valley's most prestigious tech firms. My salary of $400,000 a year was something I'd earned through blood, sweat, and more all-nighters than I could count. But to my family, my success wasn't a source of pride. It was a resource to be exploited. The Thanksgiving ambush had been meticulously planned. As I sat down at the dinner table, I noticed the unusual seating arrangement immediately. I was placed at the center like a defendant at trial. My sister Melissa entered with her latest boyfriend, Brett, a man who'd failed at 6 different entrepreneurial ventures and was currently between opportunities. They moved with the confidence of people who already knew they'd won. "We have something wonderful to share," Melissa announced, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Brett and I have found our dream home, a beautiful villa in Beverly Hills. We've already put down a soft hold with the realtor." She paused dramatically, her eyes locked on mine. Thanks to Stacy's generous wedding gift? The room erupted in rehearsed excitement. Uncle Frank raised his glass in a toast I hadn't authorized. Aunt Diane dabbed at her eyes with theatrical emotion. Even Cousin Rachel was there, iPhone in hand, capturing every moment. For the family archives. I sat frozen, my mind struggling to process the coordinated deception unfolding before me. My father cleared his throat with the authority of a judge, delivering a verdict. "Stacy, we've all discussed this as a family. You've been blessed with tremendous success, and now it's time to share that blessing with your sister. The villa is only $2.5 million. For someone of your means, it's a small sacrifice to ensure your sister's happiness. Small sacrifice." The words escaped before I could stop them. $2.5 million is a small sacrifice. I looked around the room, searching for a single face that showed surprise or disagreement. Instead, I found only expectant stares and predetermined judgment. My mother leaned forward, her expression a carefully crafted mixture of disappointment and manipulation. "We've already told the extended family about your generous gift. Imagine how embarrassed we'll be if we have to tell them you've changed your mind. Think of what people will say." That's when the true depth of the betrayal hit me. This wasn't just my immediate family. This was a calculated assault involving every branch of our family tree. As I stood to leave, needing air and space, to think the door opened and my best friend since high school, Jenny, walked in. "Sorry I'm late," she said, avoiding my eyes. "Did you tell her about the other properties we looked at, Melissa?" "The one in Malibu was stunning too, but we thought Beverly Hills was more Stacy's style to give." "Jenny? My Jenny. The friend who'd held my hair back during college, all-nighters, who'd celebrated every milestone of my career, who knew exactly how hard I'd worked for everything I had. She was now a real estate agent, and apparently she'd been showing my sister luxury properties for weeks, using her intimate knowledge of my finances to fuel my family's expectations. "You knew about this?" My voice came out as barely a whisper. Jenny finally met my eyes, and I saw no remorse there, only calculation. "Your family needed guidance on fair market values. I was helping. Besides Stacy, you always said family comes first. I'm just holding you to your own values." As I rushed from the room, desperate to escape the suffocating betrayal, I caught a glimpse of my childhood bedroom door. It was slightly ajar, and what I saw inside stopped me cold. The walls were covered with printouts, luxury real estate listings, all priced between $2 and $3 million. Photos of Melissa and Brett posing in front of mansions, spreadsheets calculating mortgage payments, and in the center a vision board with magazine cutouts spelling out "Our Dream Home," with my bank logo prominently displayed underneath. They'd turned my childhood sanctuary into a war room for their financial assault. Every teddy bear I'd left behind, every trophy from academic competitions had been pushed aside to make room for their greed. Standing there, staring at the dismantled remnants of my past, I realized this wasn't a spontaneous request. This was a long con, and I was the mark. The next morning brought no relief, only escalation. My phone had 17 missed calls from various family members by the time I woke up in my apartment, each voicemail more manipulative than the last. "Stacy, this is Aunt Linda. Remember when we bought you that laptop for college? Family helps family." "It's Uncle Tony. Don't be like your mother's sister who abandoned us. We stick together." The most painful was from my grandmother, her voice shaky with manufactured tears. "I just want to see family unity before I die. Is that too much to ask?" But nothing prepared me for the meeting my parents had arranged at their house that afternoon. They'd assembled what they called the Family Council, which apparently now included Brett, despite him having dated my sister for barely 6 months. The dining table was set up like a corporate boardroom, complete with printed agendas and a PowerPoint presentation queued up on my father's laptop. "Let's discuss the full package." My father began clicking through slides with the efficiency of a seasoned executive. "The villa is just the beginning. Melissa and Brett will need suitable transportation. We're looking at a Tesla Model S for her and a Range Rover for him. Roughly another $200,000. I felt my jaw drop as the slides continued. Wedding expenses, $200,000 for what Melissa had termed the event of the century. Monthly allowance, $15,000 to maintain their lifestyle. But the most audacious demand was yet to come. Brett stood up, smoothing his ill-fitting suit, and presented his business proposal. As Stacy knows from her own experience, he began though he knew nothing about my actual experience. "Every successful venture needs seed capital. I'm asking for a modest investment of $500,000 for my revolutionary idea." He clicked to a slide showing a vague concept for what appeared to be a social media platform for pets. "With your investment and connections, we'll be the next unicorn startup." "That's over $3 million. I said, my voice steady, despite the rage building inside me. "You're asking me for over $3 million. My mother's response was swift and practiced. "We sacrificed everything for your education, Stacy. Your father worked double shifts, I cleaned houses, we gave up our dreams so you could achieve yours. Is it really too much to ask that you help your family now that you've made it?" The guilt trip was expertly crafted, hitting every emotional button they'd installed during my childhood. But I'd grown up since then. I'd learned that their sacrifices were largely fictional, created and embellished whenever they needed leverage. My scholarships had covered my education, my part-time jobs had paid for everything else. Their double shifts were standard working hours, and my mother had cleaned houses for exactly 3 months before deciding it was beneath her. "I can offer to help with a down payment," I said, trying to find middle ground. Maybe $50,000 as a wedding gift. The room exploded. Melissa's scream was so shrill it made everyone flinch. $50,000? You probably spend that much on your stupid business dinners. I've seen your LinkedIn, Stacy. I know what VPs make. Stop being so selfish." Brett's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Successful people have an obligation to lift up their family. It's called social responsibility. Maybe they should teach that at MIT. But it was my father's cold, calculated response that cut the deepest. "Help you think we're begging for help? We're not asking for charity, Stacy. We're collecting on an investment. Every dinner we fed you, every roof we put over your head, every opportunity we provided, it's time to pay dividends." That's when Cousin Rachel revealed the true extent of their coordination. She'd been live streaming the entire confrontation to our extended family WhatsApp group. She turned her phone to show me the screen where 47 family members were watching and commenting in real time. The messages scrolled past faster than I could read, but the theme was clear. Selfish. Ungrateful. Not real family. You see, Stacy, Rachel said with a satisfied smirk. The whole family is watching. Everyone will know exactly what kind of person you really are. The pressure was mounting from all sides. My phone buzzed with notifications as family members I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly remembered my existence and their own financial needs. Cousins emerged from the woodwork with their own sob stories and outstretched hands. The family group chat had devolved into a feeding frenzy, with everyone calculating what percentage of my success they were owed. My attempts at logic fell on deaf ears. When I explained that my money was tied up in investments, retirement accounts, and plans for my own future, my mother waved dismissively. Your future. What about Melissa's future? What about our future? You're 35. Stacy, no husband, no children. What exactly are you saving for? The personal attacks were beginning. My single status, my focus on career, my choice to prioritize financial security over family demands, all became weapons in their arsenal. Melissa piled on with practiced cruelty. At least I have someone who loves me. All you have is your precious bank account. How's that working out for your loneliness? As the meeting devolved into chaos, with multiple family members shouting over each other about their own needs and my obligations, I noticed something chilling. On the coffee table, partially hidden under magazines, was a legal document. I pulled it free and found myself staring at a contract for the Beverly Hills villa. My name was already typed in as the purchaser. The signature line was blank waiting. We thought it would save time, my father explained when he saw what I'd found. The seller is motivated. We need to move fast. Just sign, and this whole unpleasantness goes away. I stood up slowly, the contract crumpling in my shaking hands. This isn't love. This is extortion. You're not my family. You're parasites. The room fell silent for exactly 3 seconds before my mother delivered her final blow. Then you're no daughter of mine. You have 1 week to reconsider. After that, you'll be dead to us. Forever. As I left the house, I heard Brett comforting Melissa. Don't worry, babe. She'll cave. They always do when family's on the line. His words followed me to my car, where I sat in the driveway shaking with a combination of rage and grief. They weren't just confident I'd give in. They were counting on it. Their entire plan, their future, their dreams, all built on the assumption that I'd sacrifice myself on the altar of family obligation. I drove away knowing that the week ahead would test every boundary I'd ever set and every ounce of strength I'd ever built. What I didn't know was that the ambush at the house was just the opening salvo in a war that would spread to every corner of my life. Monday morning arrived with a coordinated assault that would have impressed military strategists. I walked into my office at 7 a.m. to find it transformed into a floral shop. Every surface was covered with elaborate bouquets, each more ostentatious than the last. The cards all bore variations of the same message, from your loving family hoping you make the right choice. Family is forever, choose wisely. Remember who raised you. My assistant looked bewildered. Your mother called 6 times this morning about an urgent family emergency. Should I put her through? Before I could answer, the head of HR appeared at my door. Patricia Williams was usually all smiles and corporate pleasantries, but today her expression was carefully neutral. Stacy, could we have a word in my office? The walk to HR felt like a death march. Patricia closed the door and pulled out a file. We've received an anonymous complaint about one of our executives hoarding wealth while their family suffers in poverty. The complaint includes photos of your family members in distressing circumstances and suggests that your behavior reflects poorly on our company's values of community and generosity. I stared at the photos spread across her desk. They were carefully staged to maximize sympathy. My parents sitting in their modest living room, looking frailer than I'd ever seen them. Melissa crying over what appeared to be bills. Even one of Brett at a food bank, though I knew he was there as part of his latest networking opportunity, not out of need. Patricia, this is a family dispute that's being weaponized against my career. My family's trying to extort money from me. She nodded slowly. I understand these situations can be complex. However, the board is concerned about potential reputational damage. Social media moves fast these days, and a story about a heartless executive could go viral quickly. I'm not saying you've done anything wrong, but perhaps you could resolve this quietly for everyone's sake. The implications were clear. My job, the position I'd worked 15 years to achieve, was now being held hostage to my family's demands. I managed to maintain composure as I returned to my office, only to find another ambush waiting. Derek, my brother-in-law, through cousin Sarah, sat at my desk like he owned it. Spread before him were detailed printouts of what looked suspiciously like my investment portfolio. Derek worked as a financial advisor at a major firm, and he'd clearly violated every ethical boundary to access my information. Fascinating portfolio, Stacy, he said, not bothering to look up. Diversified, conservative, impressive returns. But I think we can do better. He produced a leather-bound presentation folder. I've taken the liberty of creating a restructuring plan that frees up the liquid capital your family needs while maintaining your long-term growth potential. I snatched the folder, scanning its contents with growing horror. He'd mapped out a complete liquidation strategy, converting my carefully built wealth into cash for distribution to family members. Each page detailed which assets to sell, which loans to take, which retirement funds to raid. It was financial suicide, wrapped in professional terminology. How did you get this information? This is illegal, Derek. He leaned back in my chair, unbothered by the accusation. Family helps family access resources. But here's what you need to understand. I have clients who would be very interested to know their senior VP makes $400,000 a year while their company just laid off 200 workers. The optics are terrible, don't you think? The threat was clear: corporate espionage, blackmail, and career destruction, all wrapped in a family package. Derek stood, leaving his presentation on my desk. You have my recommendations. I'd act quickly if I were you. These situations have a way of escalating beyond anyone's control. He was right about the escalation. By lunch, my email was flooded with messages from numbers I didn't recognize. The subject lines, all variations of "Your sister's story moved me" and "How can you be so heartless?" Melissa had gone nuclear on social media. Her Instagram series, titled "My Sister the Millionaire Who Won't Help Family," was a masterclass in manipulation, each post carefully crafted to maximize sympathy while painting me as a villain. The first showed her outside the Beverly Hills villa with the caption, "The house my sister promised but won't deliver." Why do successful people forget where they came from? The comments section was a battlefield. Strangers who knew nothing about our history passed judgment with stunning confidence. Money changes people. She probably doesn't even remember being poor. Capitalism creates monsters. But mixed in were comments from people I knew. Church members questioning my Christian values. College acquaintances wondering if I'd always been selfish. Former colleagues suggesting this explained why I was always so driven. The numbers were staggering: 10,000 views in the first day. The story was spreading through our community like wildfire, and Melissa knew exactly which buttons to push. She posted old photos of us as children with captions like, "Back when my sister still had a heart," and "Before success stole my best friend." Then came the most devastating blow. A notification popped up on my phone, a news alert from our local station: "Tech executive refuses to help struggling family sister speaks out." They were running a segment on the evening news. My professional reputation, built through years of hard work, was being destroyed in real time. But the cruelest betrayal was yet to come. Nathan, my ex-boyfriend, who I'd dated for 5 years, who'd been there through the startup years and the struggles, suddenly reappeared. He texted asking to meet for coffee, claiming he had something important to discuss. Against my better judgment, desperate for a friendly face, I agreed. He walked into the cafe with someone I recognized but couldn't quite place. Then it hit me. Chloe, Melissa's best friend from college. They were holding hands. "Stacy," Nathan began, his voice full of false concern. "I've been hearing about your situation. It breaks my heart to see what you've become." "What I've become?" I couldn't hide my shock. "Nathan, you were there. You saw how they treated me. You know what they're really like." He shook his head sadly. "I saw a family that loved you despite your ambition. Remember what you used to tell me, that family was everything to you, that success meant nothing without people to share it with. What happened to that girl?" Chloe leaned forward, her expression sympathetic, but her eyes calculating. "Melissa's devastated, Stacy. She looks up to you so much. All she wanted was to follow in your footsteps, have a beautiful home like you do. Is that really so wrong?" They spent an hour tag-teaming me with twisted memories and manufactured guilt. Nathan brought up intimate moments from our relationship, reframing them to support my family's narrative. "Remember when your dad helped us move into our first apartment? He threw out his back carrying boxes, but he never complained. That's the kind of people they are." What he conveniently forgot was that my father had shown up, drunk, dropped a box of my electronics down the stairs, and spent the rest of the day complaining about his back while I did all the actual moving. But confronting the revisionist history was pointless. They weren't there to listen. They were there to perform. As I finally escaped the cafe, Chloe called after me. "Melissa's birthday is next week. It would mean so much if you came with the villa contract. Think of it as a birthday gift that changes her life." I sat in my car afterward, watching Nathan and Chloe through the window. They were laughing, probably at my expense, already texting Melissa about their performance. Everyone in my life was being weaponized against me. Friends, colleagues, ex-lovers, all recruited into my family's army. The final straw came that evening. My dating profile, which I'd paused months ago to focus on work, suddenly started generating notifications. Someone had reactivated it and added new information. My income level was now prominently displayed, along with photos from the company gala where I'd worn an expensive dress. The bio had been edited to include successful executive looking for someone who understands that money isn't everything, unlike my family. The messages pouring in were vulgar and cruel, gold diggers offering to be better family than my real one, men suggesting what I really needed to become more generous, women calling me heartless and selfish. My personal life had become another battlefield in my family's war. By the time I made it home, emotionally exhausted and professionally under siege, I found my building's security guard looking uncomfortable. "Miss Stacy, your mother was here earlier. She said there was a family emergency. I didn't let her up without your permission, but she seemed very upset." I thanked him and made a mental note to increase security protocols. Inside my apartment, my sanctuary, I finally allowed myself to break down. My family wasn't just asking for money anymore. They were systematically destroying every aspect of my life until I had nothing left but the choice to give them what they wanted or lose everything I'd built. But as I sat there surrounded by the evidence of their coordinated attack, something shifted inside me. They'd pushed too far. They'd shown me exactly who they were, not family, but predators. And I'd spent too many years building my life to let them tear it down now. The war they'd started was about to take a turn they didn't expect. Because while they'd been studying my weaknesses, I'd been learning theirs. And tomorrow I would begin my counteroffensive. Tuesday morning began with my mother's nuclear strike. I woke to 17 missed calls from my bank and a text alert that made my blood run cold. "Suspicious activity detected on your account." The trust fund my parents had set up when I was born, which should have contained about $50,000 for my future children's education, had been emptied. My mother was still listed as a co-signer, a detail I'd never thought to change, because I'd never imagined she'd steal from me. The bank manager was apologetic but firm. "The withdrawal was legal. Both account holders have equal access. Your mother mentioned it was for a family emergency." $50,000 gone in an instant. Money I'd been adding to since my first job, planning for a future that might never come if my family had their way. But that was just the opening salvo. By noon, I received a call from my mortgage company. "Ms. Thompson, we're calling about the identity theft claim filed on your account. Your father says someone has been making payments in your name fraudulently." My father had called them, claiming I was an imposter, that the real Stacy would never have been able to afford such a property. He'd provided them with outdated information, old addresses, and enough confusion to freeze my account pending investigation. My home, my sanctuary, was now under attack. The legal assault began that afternoon. A process server found me at work, handing over documents in full view of my colleagues. Melissa's friend from law school, now a practicing attorney with more ambition than ethics, had helped my parents file a formal complaint of elderly financial abuse. The documents painted a picture of a daughter who'd abandoned her aging parents despite their sacrifices, leaving them to struggle while she lived in luxury. "This is insane," I told my lawyer over the phone. "They're not elderly, they're in their 60s and perfectly healthy. They both work. They own their home outright." "Doesn't matter," she replied grimly. "The accusation alone is damaging. We'll need to respond formally, and that means court appearances, documentation, possible investigation by adult protective services. They're trying to bleed you dry with legal fees, if nothing else." Wednesday brought the villa visit disaster. My family had scheduled another showing, and Melissa texted me with fake sweetness. "Please come see what you're denying us. Just look at it. That's all we ask." I should have known better, but some masochistic part of me needed to see how far they'd go. The realtor greeted me like an old friend, clearly briefed by Jenny about my supposed enthusiasm for gifting property. Melissa and Brett were already there, Brett networking with arriving neighbors dropping my name and company like business cards. "This is Stacy, the tech executive I told you about," he said to a silver-haired man in tennis whites. "She's gifting us this place as a wedding present. We're thinking of starting a family foundation. Maybe you'd be interested in partnering." Melissa had gone further, directing contractors through the house, discussing renovations to the master suite planning where the nursery would go. She'd mentally moved in, spent my money, and started a life built entirely on expectation. "Isn't it perfect?" She grabbed my arm, her nails digging in just enough to hurt. "I already feel at home here. The neighbors are wonderful. Did you know the Johnstons next door have a daughter at Stanford? Brett's already talking to them about internship opportunities." The realtor, sensing tension, smoothly interjected. I've drawn up the preliminary paperwork. Since Ms. Thompson is purchasing in cash, we can close within 2 weeks. Just need her signature. I haven't agreed to anything, I said firmly. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Melissa's mask slipped, showing the calculating predator beneath. Yes, you have. Everyone knows you have. I've told everyone. The contract's being drafted. Stacy said it's beautiful when she walked in, Brett added. We have security footage. That sounds like approval to me. They'd planned even that detail, positioning me where cameras would capture my natural reaction to the admittedly stunning property. Every word, every gesture, potential evidence in their campaign. I left without another word, but the damage was done. Photos of me at the property were already circulating in the family chat with captions like, Stacy checking out Melissa's future home, and Big Sis making dreams come true. Thursday's escalation nearly broke me. I was in a crucial client meeting when my assistant interrupted, whispering that there was a medical emergency. I excused myself to find chaos in the lobby. Paramedics were loading my mother onto a stretcher while she moaned dramatically about chest pains. It's the stress, she gasped, reaching for me with trembling hands. My daughter is killing me with her cruelty. The doctor said my heart can't take much more. The paramedics looked skeptical, but protocol demanded they transport her. I followed to the hospital, where she continued her performance for the medical staff. She has millions, she told a young nurse. But she'd rather see her family homeless than help. The stress is destroying my health. Tests revealed nothing wrong, of course. Her vitals were perfect, her EKG normal. But she'd achieved her goal. The entire hospital wing had heard about the heartless daughter with millions who wouldn't help her struggling family. The billing department made sure to send all statements to my address, a $15,000 performance that I was expected to pay. Friday brought betrayal from the last person I expected. Marcus, my assistant for 3 years, who I'd mentored from entry-level to executive support, who knew every detail of my professional life. I'd noticed him acting strangely all week, but attributed it to the chaos surrounding me. Then IT called with devastating news. We've detected unauthorized access to your email account. Someone's been forwarding your messages to an external address. They traced it back to Marcus, who'd been systematically copying every email about bonuses, stock options, and company financials to Brett's hastily created consulting firm address. When confronted by security, Marcus didn't even deny it. Brett offered me a position when his company takes off, said I'd be chief of staff. Do you know how hard it is to advance here? You make $400,000 while I make $60,000. Maybe if you paid better, people would be more loyal. The irony was sharp enough to cut. I'd fought for his raises, recommended him for bonuses, spent countless hours teaching him skills that tripled his market value. But Brett's phantom company and empty promises were worth more than 3 years of genuine mentorship. My family's scorched earth campaign reached its crescendo on Saturday. Melissa posted what she called the Truth About Stacy video on every platform. 47 minutes of manufactured pain, careful editing, and strategic emotional manipulation. She'd hired a professional videographer, used background music designed to evoke sympathy, and created a narrative that would have won film festivals if it weren't built entirely on lies. The video included interviews with family members I hadn't seen in years, each sharing a story of how I'd let them down. Uncle Ray claimed I'd promised to pay for his son's college, but reneged. Aunt Catherine said I'd refused to visit when her husband was sick. Cousin Michael insisted I'd stolen a business idea from him. None of it was true, but truth had become irrelevant in their war against me. The centerpiece was Melissa's pregnancy announcement. She held up ultrasound images, tears streaming down her face. I just wanted my baby to have a stable home, a place where they could grow up feeling secure. But my sister values money more than her own nephew or niece. The comments flooded in faster than social media platforms could moderate them. Death threats, rape threats, doxing attempts. My address was posted in 12 different forums within an hour. Pizza deliveries, and worse, started arriving at all hours. My building had to hire extra security to deal with the harassment. By Sunday, I was effectively under siege. My reputation was in tatters. My job was hanging by a thread. My finances were under attack from multiple angles. My home was no longer safe. My health was suffering from stress and lack of sleep. Everyone I'd trusted had either betrayed me or been turned against me. But in the rubble of my destroyed life, I found something my family hadn't counted on: determination forged in fire. They'd taken everything they could take. They'd used every weapon in their arsenal. They'd shown me the absolute worst of human nature, wrapped in the disguise of family love. What they didn't understand was that I hadn't built my success by being weak. I'd survived every challenge through intelligent strategy and sheer will. They'd taught me to fight by forcing me to defend myself since childhood. Now they were about to learn what happened when their scapegoat became a warrior. The notification on my phone was from my lawyer. Found something interesting about your family's finances. Can you meet tomorrow? Bring everything you have. It's time to go on offense. I smiled for the first time in a week. My family had started this war, but I was about to finish it. They'd pushed me to the breaking point, but I hadn't broken. I'd simply been reforged into something harder, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous to those who'd tried to destroy me. The attack on my professional life intensified beyond anything I could have imagined. Monday morning, 3 of my largest clients called to cancel their contracts, each citing concerns about corporate values and leadership integrity. The emails they'd received were carefully crafted, mixing truth with lies, suggesting that someone who would abandon family couldn't be trusted with business relationships. The lost revenue put my entire division at risk, and I knew my position as VP was hanging by a thread thinner than spider's silk. "Stacy, this is becoming untenable," my CEO said during an emergency meeting. "The board is asking questions. Shareholders are concerned. We've had reporters calling about the family situation. You're an excellent executive, but if this continues to affect our operations and reputation..." He didn't need to finish. The message was crystal clear. The isolation was perhaps the cruelest part. Mrs. Chen, my elderly neighbor, who I'd brought groceries to every week during the pandemic, now crossed the street when she saw me coming. She'd been shown Melissa's videos by her daughter and decided I was not the person she thought. 3 years of genuine kindness erased by 47 minutes of lies. The charity board I'd served on for 5 years, where I'd personally raised over $2 million for underprivileged youth, asked me to resign. "It's not about the truth," the board president explained apologetically. "It's about perception. We can't have someone with this kind of controversy associated with our mission." My work, my passion for helping children who reminded me of my younger self, stripped away because my family had made me toxic by association. My dating life already complicated by my schedule, and success flatlined completely. The few matches I received on apps now came with messages like, "I know about your family situation, but I'm not like that." Or worse, "Maybe if you were more generous with everyone, you'd find love." My personal information had been so thoroughly disseminated that I'd become either a target for gold diggers who thought I might be desperate enough to pay for companionship, or a pariah to anyone looking for genuine connection. Then came the intervention dinner, what my family called Thanksgiving Redux the Last Chance. The invitation arrived via process server because apparently even family dinners now required legal documentation. "Your presence is requested and required." It read as if I could be compelled by formal language to submit to their demands. Against every instinct screaming at me to stay away, I went. Perhaps I was a masochist. Perhaps I needed to see the whites of their eyes one more time. Or perhaps I just wanted to witness what new depths they'd sink to in their campaign to break me. The house was packed with relatives I hadn't seen in years, some I could barely remember meeting. 37 family members by my count, all gathered for what felt like an execution rather than an intervention. They'd arranged chairs in a circle, with one seat in the middle marked with my name, a literal hot seat for their kangaroo court. Uncle Frank stood first, unfolding a piece of paper with shaking hands that I suspected were trembling more from excitement than age. "We've prepared a presentation," he announced. "Stacy's Selfishness of Family History." What followed was a grotesque parade of manufactured grievances and twisted memories. Each relative had been assigned a story, a moment when I'd supposedly failed them. Cousin Amy claimed I'd refused to lend her money for nursing school, conveniently forgetting she'd wanted it for a pyramid scheme. Aunt Beatrice insisted I'd missed her husband's funeral, out of spite not mentioning it had been held while I was hospitalized with pneumonia. The childhood photos were the cruelest weapons, each one carefully selected and recontextualized. "Look how happy she was when we gave her everything," my mother narrated, showing a Christmas morning photo. "Before money corrupted her soul." The fact that I'd been happy because I was 7 and believed in Santa Claus was irrelevant to their narrative. "Remember this?" My father held up a photo from my high school graduation. "We were so proud. We thought we'd raised someone with values." He turned to the assembled crowd. "We were wrong. We raised a monster who hoards wealth while her family suffers." Melissa's contribution was a professionally produced slideshow set to manipulative music. Photos of her looking sad outside beautiful homes. Brett comforting her as she held those fake ultrasound images. Even staged shots of her volunteering at a soup kitchen, suggesting she understood poverty in a way I never could. "All I wanted," she said, tears on cue, "was to give my baby a good life, to have what Stacy has." But she'd rather see her own niece or nephew homeless than share even a fraction of her wealth. Then came the surprise witness. My own lawyer, Richard Harrison, who'd helped to negotiate my company's sale, walked in with cousin Rachel on his arm. They were holding hands, and the implications hit me like a physical blow. Stacy. Richard said, sitting down with the authority of someone who held all the cards. I'm here as family now, not as your attorney. Rachel and I have been together for 8 months. She's helped me understand the pain you've caused these good people. The betrayal was breathtaking. The man who'd been privy to every detail of my financial life, who'd been trusted with my most sensitive information, had been sharing it with my cousin for months. Every strategy I discussed with him, every asset protection measure, every plan to defend against my family's attacks, all of it had been reported back to them. I prepared some documents. He continued producing a folder that looked official enough to be legally binding. A restructuring of your assets that would allow for a tax-advantaged transfer to family members. It's quite clever, actually. You could write off the villa as a gift claim deductions and everyone wins. And if I refuse, I asked, though I already knew the answer. Richard's smile was serpentine. Well, I'd hate for certain irregularities in your company's sale documents to come to light. International transfers can be so complex. Sometimes mistakes are made. Sometimes those mistakes look like tax evasion if examined uncharitably. There it was. Blackmail from my own lawyer, delivered with the casual confidence of someone who knew I was trapped. The room held its breath, waiting for my capitulation. They'd played every card, exploited every relationship, destroyed every aspect of my life. Surely now I would break. But something unexpected happened in that moment. Sitting in that circle of predators masquerading as family, surrounded by the wreckage of every relationship I'd valued, threatened with the loss of everything I'd built, I felt free. They'd already taken everything they could take. They'd burned every bridge, salted every field. There was nothing left to lose. I stood slowly, looking each of them in the eye. You want to know the truth about family? I said, my voice carrying a strength I didn't know I possessed. Family doesn't ambush you on holidays. Family doesn't hire lawyers to blackmail you. Family doesn't destroy your career because you won't submit to extortion. Family doesn't steal from you, lie about you, or try to break you for their own gain. Sit down, Stacy, my mother commanded. You're making a scene. No, I replied, pulling out my phone. I'm done with scenes. I'm done with your performances, and I'm done with all of you. I hit record on my phone, holding it up for everyone to see. This is for my actual lawyer, the new one who isn't sleeping with my relatives. Everyone in this room just witnessed Richard Harrison attempting to blackmail me regarding my company sale. That's a felony, Richard. Did Rachel mention that when she was sharing my financial information with you? The color drained from his face as the implications hit him. Around the room, family members began to shift uncomfortably. They'd been prepared for tears for breaking for capitulation. They hadn't prepared for me to fight back with their own weapons. As for the rest of you, I continued, still recording. This intervention is nothing more than organized harassment. The false pregnancy, the elderly abuse, claims, the coordinated social media attacks, all of it documented, all of it actionable, all of it evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud. You can't threaten us, Brett said, but his voice lacked its usual arrogance. We're family. No, I said, heading for the door. You're defendants, every single one of you who participated in this campaign. Every lie told, every document forged, every false claim made. I have records of all of it. And unlike your friend Richard here, my new lawyer actually follows legal ethics. As I reached the door, my grandmother called out, Where are you going, Stacy? We're not finished here. I turned back one last time, taking in the room full of people who shared my DNA, but nothing else of value. Yes, we are. We've been finished for a long time. I just didn't realize it until you showed me who you really are. Thank you for that. It's the only honest thing you've done. I walked out to the sound of chaos erupting behind me. Accusations flying, people demanding Richard explain his relationship with Rachel, others panicking about legal implications. The coalition of greed was fracturing, turning on itself in the absence of their chosen victim. In my car, I allowed myself exactly 5 minutes to mourn the family I'd never really had. Then I called my new lawyer, the one recommended by a CEO friend who'd survived her own family's attempts at financial abuse. Did you get the recording? She asked without preamble. Every word, feed, I confirmed, including Richard's blackmail attempt. Excellent. We'll have him disbarred by the end of the month. As for the others, the cease and desist letters are already prepared. We file the civil suits tomorrow morning. As I drove away from my childhood home for the last time, I realized something profound. They'd meant to break me at that dinner to force my surrender through overwhelming pressure. Instead, they'd freed me. By pushing me past my breaking point, they'd shown me I was unbreakable. And now it was their turn to learn what happened when you declared war on someone with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The offensive began at dawn on Tuesday. My new lawyer, Diane Chen, was a force of nature who'd built her reputation defending executives against predatory families. She moved with the precision of a military strategist, and by 7 a.m., cease and desist letters had been delivered to every family member who'd participated in the harassment campaign. The letters were comprehensive, detailing every illegal action, every defamatory statement, every coordinated attack, with promises of civil and criminal prosecution if the behavior continued. The private investigator she'd recommended, a former FBI agent named James Morrison, had been working around the clock. His first report arrived as I sat in Diane's office, and the contents were explosive. Brett's gambling debts exceeded $800,000, spread across multiple casinos and underground poker games. He owed money to people who didn't accept bankruptcy as payment. His business ventures were all shells created to launder money and hide assets from creditors. But here's the interesting part, Morrison said, sliding photos across the desk. Your parents aren't the victims they pretend to be. They own 3 rental properties in Florida that they've never declared to the IRS. The income's been flowing to offshore accounts for 15 years. They've hidden approximately $500,000 in assets while claiming poverty. The irony was delicious. While demanding millions from me, they'd been sitting on their own substantial nest egg, committing tax fraud with the casual confidence of people who'd never faced consequences. Diane smiled like a shark scenting blood. This changes everything. They can't claim financial hardship while hiding assets. And the IRS will be very interested in their unreported income. The investigation into Melissa revealed her own web of lies. The pregnancy was indeed fake, the ultrasound images purchased from a website that sold them to women trying to trap partners. But that was just the beginning. She'd been running her own scams for years, targeting elderly men on dating sites, extracting gifts and money with promises of love she never intended to fulfill. 3 victims had already filed police reports that had gone nowhere, but together they painted a pattern of fraud. Your sister's looking at serious jail time if these men press charges, Morrison noted, which they will once they learn they're not alone. Jenny's real estate activities proved equally damning. She'd been using her access to my financial information to steer clients toward overpriced properties, collecting double commissions and kickbacks. The state real estate board had received multiple complaints that suddenly made sense when connected. Her license wasn't just at risk, she was facing criminal charges for fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. While the investigators worked, I focused on rebuilding my professional life. The truth about my family's campaign had begun to circulate, helped by a few strategic leaks to sympathetic journalists. The narrative was shifting from heartless executive abandons family to successful woman targeted by fraudulent relatives. My clients began returning, some sheepishly apologizing for believing the lies. The real turning point came when 3 cousins reached out privately. Marcus, David, and Elena had all been targets of similar campaigns years earlier. Marcus had been forced to pay for Uncle Frank's emergency surgery that turned out to be a vacation to Vegas. David had lost his house trying to satisfy Aunt Linda's escalating demands. Elena had been disowned for refusing to fund Melissa's first wedding to a man who didn't exist. We've been waiting for someone strong enough to stand up to them, Elena explained during a clandestine meeting at a coffee shop downtown. We have evidence. Recordings, documents, proof of their patterns. We've been collecting it for years, hoping someday we could fight back. Their evidence was damning. Audio recordings of my parents coaching family members on how to guilt-trip relatives. Documents showing coordinated campaigns against other successful family members over 2 decades. Even video of my mother laughing about how easily manipulated I'd been as a child, how they'd trained me to feel guilty for succeeding. Armed with this ammunition, Diane crafted a masterpiece of legal strategy. We filed civil suits for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, conspiracy to commit fraud, and harassment. The criminal referrals went to the DA's office, particularly focused on Richard's blackmail attempt, the identity theft, and the fraudulent elderly abuse claims. The counteroffensive gained momentum when a local journalist, intrigued by the story's reversal, dug deeper into my family's history. She uncovered a pattern of behavior going back generations. My grandparents had done the same to their siblings. My parents had learned from the masters. It was a family tradition of cannibalizing anyone who dared to succeed. The story broke on Thursday evening. The Villa scam, how one family's greed destroyed itself, ran as the lead on local news. The piece was devastating, featuring interviews with previous victims, financial experts explaining the manipulation tactics, and legal analysts discussing the criminal implications. My family's carefully crafted image imploded in real time. Richard Harrison's fall was swift and brutal. The Bar Association suspended his license pending investigation. His firm fired him within hours of the blackmail recording surfacing. Rachel, realizing she'd attached herself to a sinking ship, tried to distance herself, but it was too late. She was named in multiple lawsuits, her own involvement in the conspiracy documented and undeniable. Brett's creditors, alerted by the media coverage to his whereabouts and association with my supposedly wealthy family, came calling. Suddenly, the man who'd demanded millions from me was begging for protection from people who didn't accept "my girlfriend's sister won't pay" as an excuse. He fled in the middle of the night, leaving Melissa to face the consequences alone. The family WhatsApp group, once a weapon against me, became a circular firing squad. Members blamed each other for the plan's failure. The recordings of their planning sessions, leaked by the cousins who'd been documenting everything, showed the depth of their premeditation. Uncle Frank accused my mother of pushing too hard. Aunt Linda blamed Melissa for being too obvious. My parents turned on each other, each claiming the other had masterminded the scheme. By Friday, the siege was lifting. My building's security reported no more harassment attempts. The death threats stopped as trolls moved on to other targets. My professional reputation not only recovered, but improved as colleagues admired how I'd handled the crisis. Several executives reached out privately, sharing their own stories of family financial abuse, creating an unexpected support network. The legal machinery ground forward relentlessly. Criminal charges were filed against Brett for fraud, against my parents for tax evasion and identity theft, against Richard for blackmail and breach of fiduciary duty. The civil suits promised to drain whatever resources they'd hidden poetic justice for their attempt to drain mine. Melissa's public persona crumbled as her victims came forward. The elderly men she'd scammed gave interviews about their experiences. The fake pregnancy became a meme symbolic of influencer culture's toxicity. Brands that had approached her for sponsorships fled, and her social media accounts were suspended for violating terms of service. The investigation into Jenny revealed she'd been stealing from clients for years, using her position to access financial information and skim from transactions. Her real estate license was revoked, and criminal charges followed. The woman who'd betrayed 20 years of friendship for a commission faced bankruptcy and possible jail time. My parents' hidden assets were frozen by the IRS. The rental properties they'd concealed were seized. The offshore accounts were traced and reported. Their comfortable retirement built on tax evasion and hidden income while demanding money from their children evaporated overnight. They faced not just financial ruin but federal prison. As the week ended, I sat in my office no longer filled with guilt-trip flowers but with messages of support from real friends and colleagues. The family that had tried to destroy me was destroying itself, eaten alive by the same greed they'd tried to weaponize against me. The cousins who joined my fight were building their own lives free from the toxic dynamics that had trapped us all for so long. Diane called with a final update. "They want to settle. All of them. They're begging for mercy." "What do you recommend, Bix?" I asked, though I already knew my answer. "Show them the same mercy they showed you," she replied. "None." I agreed. They'd taught me that family was a weapon, that love was conditional, that success was a sin unless shared with parasites. Now they were learning the harsh truth: when you declare war on someone who spent their life fighting to survive, you'd better be prepared to lose everything. And they were about to lose it all. The complete collapse of my family's scheme happened faster than even I had anticipated. Within 6 months, the legal consequences had reshaped their entire lives. My parents' tax evasion trial ended with guilty verdicts on all counts. They received 18 months in federal prison and were ordered to pay $700,000 in back taxes, penalties, and fines. The hidden rental properties were sold at auction to satisfy their debts, leaving them with nothing but their heavily mortgaged primary residence. Brett's gambling debts caught up with him in spectacular fashion. He was arrested at the Canadian border trying to flee the country with $40,000 he'd stolen from a new girlfriend he'd met online. The fraud charges from Melissa's elderly victims were added to his growing list of legal problems. He faced 15 years in prison, though his lawyer negotiated a plea deal for 7. Melissa visited him exactly once, to serve divorce papers for a marriage that had never actually happened. Richard Harrison's disbarment proceedings were swift and merciless. The state bar found him guilty of multiple ethics violations, including breach of fiduciary duty, conflict of interest, and attempted blackmail. His assets were frozen pending civil lawsuits from other clients who came forward with similar stories of betrayal. Rachel, faced with her own legal troubles and a boyfriend heading to prison, fled to stay with distant relatives in Ohio, her social media presence scrubbed clean as if it had never existed. Jenny's downfall was perhaps the most pathetic. The investigation revealed she'd stolen over $300,000 from various clients over 5 years. Her real estate license was permanently revoked, and she faced both criminal charges and civil lawsuits from her victims. The friend who'd sat beside me through late-night study sessions and celebrated my first job offer was sentenced to 5 years in prison. She wrote me a letter, blaming me for her troubles, showing she'd learned nothing from the experience. Melissa's story became a cautionary tale about social media manipulation and family fraud. The fake pregnancy scandal followed her everywhere she went. Unable to find legitimate employment with her name tied to such public fraud, she moved back into our parents' house, now facing foreclosure. The last I heard, she was working at a mall kiosk, selling phone cases, her dreams of luxury, funded by my success, as dead as the fake baby she'd used to manipulate emotions. The extended family scattered like roaches when the light was turned on. Those who'd participated in the harassment faced their own legal consequences, ranging from restraining orders to civil judgments. The family WhatsApp group was evidence in multiple court cases, their coordinated attacks preserved forever in the legal record. Uncle Frank declared bankruptcy. Aunt Linda's husband divorced her after learning about her role in the scheme. The family reunions they'd weaponized against me ceased to exist. The bonds of greed severed by consequences they'd never imagined facing. The financial recovery was substantial. The civil lawsuits resulted in judgments totaling $2.3 million, though collecting from people facing criminal charges and bankruptcy was its own challenge. What mattered more was the principle they'd tried to steal millions from me and ended up owing me money they'd never be able to pay. The poetic justice was satisfying in ways money couldn't measure. But the real transformation happened within me. The trauma of being targeted by my own family required serious therapy to process. I found a specialist in family financial abuse who helped me understand the patterns that had been established in my childhood. The guilt I'd carried for succeeding while my family struggled was revealed as programmed response trained into me from birth to make me an easier target. Through therapy, I learned that my hypervigilance about money, my difficulty trusting others, and my workaholic tendencies were all responses to growing up in a family that saw my potential as something to exploit rather than celebrate. The healing process was painful, excavating wounds I'd buried under professional success and financial achievement. I also discovered an entire community of people who'd experienced similar betrayals. The support group for family financial abuse survivors became a crucial part of my healing journey. Hearing stories from others who'd been targeted by their families helped me realize I wasn't alone, wasn't crazy, and wasn't responsible for their choices. One of the most meaningful connections came from that group. Thomas Chen, a software executive who'd faced similar extortion from his extended family, understood the unique pain of being attacked by those who should have protected you. Our friendship developed, slowly built on shared understanding and mutual respect. Neither of us rushed into anything romantic, both too aware of how our experiences had affected our ability to trust. A year after the Thanksgiving ambush that started it all, I established the Phoenix Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to helping people escape family financial abuse. We provided legal resources, counseling referrals, and emergency financial assistance to those being extorted by relatives. The foundation's mission statement was simple: family shouldn't be a weapon. The scholarship fund I created specifically targeted students estranged from their families due to financial abuse. 10 full rides to MIT every year for brilliant young people whose families tried to clip their wings rather than help them soar. The first recipient, a young woman whose story eerily mirrored my own, sent me a letter that reduced me to tears. "You showed me it's possible to succeed without sacrificing yourself to family greed." My professional life flourished once the toxic influence of my family was removed. Free from constant attacks and manipulation, I was promoted to executive vice president. The company appreciated how I'd handled the crisis with grace and determination. My story became a case study in crisis management taught in business schools as an example of maintaining professional integrity under personal attack. The chosen family I built proved infinitely more valuable than the blood relatives who'd betrayed me. Colleagues who'd stood by me during the attacks became true friends. The cousins who'd joined my fight against the family's toxicity stayed in touch. All of us committed to breaking the generational patterns of abuse. We celebrated holidays together, creating new traditions, free from manipulation and guilt. 2 years after that fateful Thanksgiving, I stood in my own home, a reasonable but comfortable place that I'd purchased with clean money and a clear conscience. Around me were 20 people who'd proven their love through actions, not demands. We raised our glasses in a toast I'd written carefully. To the family we choose and the boundaries we honor. To love that lifts rather than leeches. To success that's celebrated, not coveted, and to the beautiful truth that DNA doesn't determine destiny. Thomas stood beside me, our relationship having evolved into something deep and meaningful. He understood why I'd never merge finances completely, why I'd always maintain my independence, why trust would forever be earned rather than assumed. His family had disowned him for refusing to fund his brother's drug habit, and he'd built his own life with the same determination I'd shown. My phone buzzed with a notification I immediately deleted. Melissa had found a way around the blocking to send another message, begging for money, claiming hardship, and invoking the memory of our childhood. I felt nothing. No guilt, no anger, no obligation. The family that had tried to destroy me had become ghosts haunting only themselves with the consequences of their choices. The local news ran a follow-up story on the anniversary of the original scandal. From Victim to Victor, how Stacey Thompson turned family betrayal into a force for good. They interviewed scholarship recipients, foundation beneficiaries, and experts on family financial abuse. My parents, watching from their prison cells, got to see the positive impact their negative actions had inadvertently created. The interviewer asked me if I had any regrets about how things had ended with my family. I considered the question carefully before answering. I regret that they chose greed over genuine relationship. I regret that they saw my success as something to steal rather than celebrate. But I don't regret protecting myself. I don't regret choosing my own well-being over their demands. And I certainly don't regret learning that love isn't measured in dollars and family isn't defined by blood. The interview ended with footage from the Phoenix Foundation's latest fundraiser. Hundreds of people who'd escaped family financial abuse gathered to support others still trapped. We'd raised $3 million that night, enough to help dozens of people build new lives free from toxic family dynamics. As I watched the news segment from my couch surrounded by the family I'd chosen, I reflected on the journey. My biological family had given me one gift. Through their betrayal, they'd taught me the difference between love and manipulation, between support and exploitation, between family and shared DNA. They'd tried to break me and instead had forged me into someone unbreakable. The story could have ended differently. I could have given in, handed over the millions, and spent my life funding their greed. I would have been financially drained and emotionally destroyed, never enough, no matter how much I gave. Instead, I'd chosen myself, chosen growth, chosen to transform pain into purpose. My phone rang with a call from the foundation. Another person needed help escaping financial abuse from their family. As I took the call, ready to offer the support I desperately needed 2 years ago, I smiled. My family had ordered me to buy them a luxury villa or be disowned forever. I'd chosen disownment and discovered it wasn't a threat but a gift. The price of freedom from toxic family was one I'd pay again without hesitation. The last words of the news segment echoed as I began planning how to help the latest person seeking freedom. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the word no. And sometimes losing the family you were born into helps you find the family you were meant to have. I couldn't have said it better myself. What about you? Have you ever faced pressure from family to sacrifice your success for their comfort? Have you been guilt-tripped into giving more than you could afford emotionally or financially? Share your story in the comments below, because you're not alone in this struggle. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about surviving and thriving after family betrayal. Click the notification bell so you won't miss our next video about setting boundaries and protecting yourself from toxic relationships. And please share this video with anyone who needs to hear that it's okay to choose yourself over family demands. Thank you for watching, and remember, your success is yours to celebrate, not theirs to steal. Until next time, stay strong and keep choosing yourself.